Welcome aboard Just Jets with your captain, Matt O'Leary. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hello and welcome to episode number 19 of Just Jets. What's going on? I am Matt O'Leary, hanging out with you for the next half hour or so. Going to be a Jamal Adams heavy show. I'm sure you've expected that. That's why you're coming here. What I'm going to start with is who's to blame him. Then I'm going to get into the voicemails, which a lot of them is Jamal Adams and trade proposals and stuff like that, which I'm all for. We're going to, really break this down and get into it. I want to hear from you guys and see, how it is that you're feeling about this, whether he should get paid or traded or whatever the case may be, that whatever's going to happen with this guy. It's not an easy situation. It's not something that's so cookie cutter. And I think we've found that out over this past week. I really do. Everything that's gone on since the Instagram comments originally. That's when my first video came out, and I said that Jamal Adams doesn't want to be here. I don't know if that, clickbait, I don't think is the right word. I think it was a clickable title, obviously. That's a given. But I think I was reading the room, which was that he's not happy. If you want to take that step further and make it he doesn't want to be here, that's where I took the leap. It's a little bit of a leap. I'll admit that. Fine. But then a few hours later, he puts in for the trade request. And it's like, oh my God, here we go. For real this time, here we go. And that starts to bring up the questions of why this is happening. And most importantly, who's to blame for all of this? Is it Jamal? Is it Gase? Is it Douglas? So Jamal Adams, we'll start with Jamal, work our way over. Jamal has been talking about getting paid for a long time. Even going back to the Todd Bowles era, he's talked about wanting to get paid. And from the player's perspective, you understand that they want to get paid and they want to get theirs. I get it. He obviously wasn't happy when Joe Douglas received calls or shopped him, which I always thought was a stretch. If you answer the phone, you have to answer the phone on everybody. Nobody is off limits. You got to see, especially when you were a dumpster fire, will the Jets have one win at the trade deadline? Two? Maybe? I don't remember what their record was off the top of my head, but it couldn't have been anything good. And, these teams were calling, and if someone was going to go crazy, like let's say Dallas went nuts and was like, you know what, I'll give you a 2020 first, a 2021 first, and I don't know, a third in 2020 also. So 2 firsts and a third. Yeah, Joe Douglas makes that trade. You have to. You have to do it. If someone's going to offer you something crazy, you do it. You listen to anything what these people want to call in. And just because you're listening doesn't mean you have to accept it or that you're actively shopping him. But you're not doing your due diligence if you're just sitting there with your fingers plugged in your ears pretending that everything's fine, especially when that's really not the case when your team has been so bad for a long time and you need to rebuild. And I'm not saying to actively shop Jamal for no reason. That's not what this is about, but I'm just trying to set up the timeline here. So Jamal was very unhappy with that. Didn't talk to the GM at first for a little bit. They make up a little bit. Then the rumors come back around the draft. And then they started to come out again about him getting paid. And we started to see signs that Jamal didn't want to be here or only wanted to be here if he was getting paid. The next one is Adam Gase. And you guys know, if you're a loyal watcher or listener to the show or watch on YouTube, whatever it is, however you consume, what I'm putting out there, you know how I feel about Adam Gase. It's very obvious. I don't think he's a good head coach. I think he is extremely flawed and probably a bottom 5 head coach in this league. With that being said, I don't put this on Adam Gase. I am looking for things to pin on this head coach. This is not one of them. It's not fair to pin this on Adam Gase. You guys have me defending Adam Gase. Some of social media has me defending Adam Gase because they're trying to throw him under the bus. How does this have anything to do with Gase? And I know I saw Cromartie's tweet about he quoted saying that he had a conversation with Jamal, and when you have a coach that doesn't care, this is what happens. And I get that. I'm not everyone loves Adam Gase. This is a fact. We know this for a fact. But this has been ongoing about Jamal wanting to get paid as in his second year in the league under Todd Bowles. We heard him talking about $100 million sounds nice. It's not on Gase. It's not fair to pin this on Gase. And that's coming from someone like me who's about as anti-Adam Gase as it can get. You can't, I understand you don't like the guy. I don't like him either. But this doesn't fit. You can't spin zone this to go against Adam Gase. That's not right nor fair. And then Joe Douglas. How is anyone pinning this on Joe Douglas? If you saw on TikTok, one of the great new social media platforms, I think it's Jets Nation's the account. Right after the news, he had a video, and it was I reacted. I put it on my TikTok, and it was on my IG story. If you saw it, he's basically saying that Joe Douglas is an idiot, and that fire Douglas and that get that hashtag trending, or whatever it was, something to that effect. How is this Joe Douglas's fault? That's what I want to know. If someone could explain to me how Joe Douglas is at fault for not wanting to pay a player 2 years too early and give in to his demands that are not even like remotely close to what his market should be, right? Highest paid safety in the NFL right now is $14.6 million a year. That's Eddie Jackson. Jamal Adams is allegedly asking for $20+ million per year. That's almost a $6 million difference from any other safety in the sport. $6 million. Now, I understand that he is better and does more than almost every single safety in this league. I would say he's the best safety in the league. Maybe at worst, top 3. At worst, he's the 3rd best safety in the league. You're still going to pay him $20 million a year? 20. That is increasing the safety market by 38%. Do you know what Joe Douglas is going to do, or what he's going to look like to other GMs around the league if he gives into his guy like that? He can't do it. He can't. It's just going to show, that you could get pushed all over. If you cry and scream all you want, then you get your way. That's what it really comes down to. And I know that there's going to be phone calls and there's going to be messages, and I saw in the comments on social media and on Twitter, what does it show that you're not willing to pay your best player? Well, when his demands are crazy, way higher than what it should be, what his market should be, then it shows that you're a good business person, that you have a mindset for how to build a team. Like, if you want to make the comparison to, I don't know, let's do it to quarterback. Let's do quarterback. Let's say, I don't know, let's use Pat Mahomes, I guess. We use Pat Mahomes. Say he wanted close to 40% higher than what the highest paid quarterback in the league is getting. That's insane. That would be what? This is not a math podcast. He'd be getting like $60 million a year. Well, the next highest paid guy is $35 million or something crazy. Listen, again, I'm not a math guy. Don't come at me for my math. The principle of giving in to the squeaky wheel is bad. It sets a bad precedent, because then it just shows if you cry and scream, you're going to get your way, which that's just not how Joe Douglas operates. He's only been here a year at this point, and it's already been obvious. He didn't give in to Robbie Anderson. He didn't give in to Jamal Adams now. He's not someone who's just going to say, okay, well, he's being annoying. Well, let's just pay him and shut him up. And pay him way over market value. And I mean way over. $20 million a year is not close to what Jamal Adams should be getting. At the most, $17 million a year. That's, I think, 16.4% higher than any other safety in football. That's a big chunk of a raise, right? Like, let's say, like you work at, let's say me or you, regular Joe, work at a job. You get a 16% raise. But it's pretty good. You're doing pretty good for yourself. I'd be happy with a 16% raise. If you go in there to your boss and say, I want a 38% or 37% raise, you're going to get laughed out of the building. And it's just hard for people to realize that, because these millions of dollars is way more than any of the dollars that someone like you or I are going to be dealing with. And it's understandable. They play a sport and they have an occupation where their talent is able to yield that much money. And I get it. I do get it. But the NFL is still a business. It still operates like anything else ever, like how any other business operates. And if Joe Douglas goes there and says, you know what, Jamal, you win. Here's $21 million a year. What is that going to do to your cap situation? Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but after that, you're going to have to pay Sam Darnold eventually. You hope that you're going to have to pay some of these guys that Joe Douglas just drafted. I know they don't have a ton of talent on this roster. I understand. I really, really do. I get it. Believe me, as someone who's been critical of Mike McCagnon for as long as I have, believe me, I get it. But because one guy is upset that he hasn't gotten paid yet after 3 years in the league, when the Jets really have no obligation to pay him yet, it's bad luck if you give into it. It's a bad luck. Granted, if this is a year from now, this is after year 4, we realize what the cap's going to be like in the COVID situation, because that's another thing. No one knows what the cap situation is going to be like, if they're even going to be able to play this year, all that stuff. It is so much that goes into this. If this is after the season, like let's say everything remains the same. You play the games, no fans in the stands, it doesn't matter. Let's say the revenue loss isn't anything super crazy where it's going to affect the cap in a negative way. If he comes in and is like, hey, I'd like to get paid now after year 4 instead of taking on that 5th-year option, then Joe Douglas goes, you know what? Yeah, we'll make you the highest paid safety. You'll get 5 years at an average annual value of $17 million a year. How does that sound? That Jamal should say, great. Thank you for that. I appreciate being the highest paid safety in the league by 16% higher than anyone else who's playing the position. I don't know. This whole thing is just really frustrating. And Jamal's a great player, and I wish he would be on this team for the foreseeable future. But not at what he's asking for, not what he's demanding for. And the fact that he would accept a trade to one of his 7 teams that he listed out, Jamal Adams has the audacity, or he, in his mind, the authority to say, oh, I only want to be moved to these 7 teams. But the fact that he would not want or not necessarily need an extension to go to one of those 7 teams should tell you all that you need to know. He doesn't want to be here. That's the end of it. Jamal Adams does not want to be a New York Jet. Period. Stop. It's not Joe Douglas's fault. It's not Adam Gase's fault. This is Jamal. This is on Jamal Adams. All right, let's get into the phone lines, the questions. We're going to go to Julio from Miami first. Wants to talk about Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon, actually.
Hey, my name's Julio. I'm calling from Miami, and I have an interesting question. Basically, Antonio Brown, he was cleared of all his charges here in Broward County, and apparently his lawyer said he's all good to go. I know he's a head case, but
Yes.
The Jets do need receivers, and I don't know how Joe Douglas would feel about signing Antonio Brown, but let's just say for whatever reason he were to give Antonio Brown a chance, how would you feel about that? And also, Josh Gordon, I believe he's suspended indefinitely, but you know, they're always giving these people one more chance. If for whatever reason the league decides to give Josh Gordon one more chance to stay clean and, play football again, how would you feel if the Jets decided to sign Josh Gordon? You know, we could use another good receiver. Antonio Brown could still play. Josh Gordon, I mean, he did okay with the Patriots, but if he could get, 800 yards in a season, 900 yards in a season, I think that'd be pretty good. Just wanted to hear your take on it, and keep up the good stuff, and thank you for everything.
Appreciate it, Julio. Thank you so much for the question. As far as it goes with Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon, you talked about second chances in your question, which is completely fair. I think everyone in life, no matter what, football or whatever, I think everyone deserves a second chance. People make mistakes, and I don't think you should be. I mean, I think you should be held accountable for it, but I don't think that means that you're not allowed to get another opportunity. Like, you should be able to get a second chance. And both Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon got second chances in this league. Right? It happened with Antonio Brown's and the Raiders. It happens when he was with the Patriots was another opportunity. Antonio Brown's got his chances in this league. Josh Gordon has gotten numerous chances in this league. And I think they are more likely to bring a negative than they are a positive. So for that reason, I would avoid both those guys. I would be more willing to sign a Taylor Gabriel or even bring back Demaryius Thomas in a fourth wide receiver role. Granted, I don't want Demaryius Thomas to, get reps as a starting outside wide receiver, but as depth, sure, bring him back for $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is, and go from there. But I'm really all good on Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon. I get it. There is talent there. I'm not denying that, but I think they bring more negative than the risk. It's more of a risk than the reward. You're more likely to get the risk than the reward, in my eyes anyway. So I would have to pass on both those guys. Next up is Earl from Brooklyn, and he wants to make his case for paying Jamal Adams right now. So let's hear out Earl.
Hey, Matt. Love your show. Just want to say to you, I'm Earl from Brooklyn, who lives in Virginia now, but I'm from Brooklyn,
Okay.
grew up. Older than you guys, and I want to just talk about your approach on Adams and why you should pay him. Okay. I've been a Jets fan from Joe Namath days. Do you know how many superstars, inbred, drafted superstars the Jets have had over that time? I don't really know either, but it ain't many. I've been a Jet fan forever.
Fair.
And when you get superstars, the last one was probably Darrelle Revis. We don't get many of those. I understand the position. If it was a quarterback, you probably want to pay him. But I understand the position, but what do other superstars look at? If you don't, how we get them here if you don't take care of your own? How do we get superstars from other teams to sign as free agents with the Jets if they look and go, well, if they're not taking care of their in-house superstar, what make you think I want to go there? Anyway, that's my question. Hopefully it gets on the show. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. So I think Earl made a good point. I see where he's coming from. I do, because he's right. The Jets haven't had a ton of superstars over their time, which is 100% true. But I think what this comes down to is Joe Douglas not wanting to pay him yet. Or maybe even better of a response, Jamal Adams only wanting to be here if he is going to get paid at that high of a rate. It would completely blow up the safety market. We're not talking about resetting it as like even what CJ Mosley got at the $17 million a year. This is resetting it by a huge amount. We said 37, 38% different from going from 14.6 up to $20 million plus per year. And the reason why, this is what it really breaks down to. Jamal wants to get paid now because if he gets, let's say, a 5-year deal, he becomes a free agent before the age of 30 and could cash in again. That's why. That's why he wants to cash in twice. And I get it. I understand that. But even still, his asking price is still way too high. And his demands are way too high. I just think pretty much ever since the trade deadline, I think Jamal has taken it really personal, and I think that's when things really changed. And I don't fault Joe Douglas for doing what he did. I don't, because I don't think he really did anything. He answered the phone and listened. That's it. That's all he did. It's not like he called up Jerry Jones and was like, "Hey, I have Jamal Adams here. Would you give me your first and a third for him?" That's not how it went down. We know that now. I think there's too many risks in paying Jamal Adams that much money right now. I do. Not for that much. It's with everything going on in the world right now and with COVID-19, it's a lot. It's a lot. We don't know what the cap situation is going to be like going forward. Is it going to be able to increase? Are they going to have to decrease? If there's no fans and they're not getting revenue that way, is there going to be a season? these are all so many questions where why are you going to allocate, say it's $100 million to one person now? I think Jamal has to be a little bit more flexible. If he's a little bit more flexible and willing to work, then I don't think this would be as big of an issue. But it's like, I need it this way right now, or I'm not playing for your team. That's where it's getting a little bit crazy to me. Next up, and thank you for the question, Earl. Next up is Joe from Florida, and he wants to talk about trading Jamal Adams for picks and why he's not necessarily a big fan of that.
Hey, how you doing? This is Joe from Florida. I kind of wanted to get your opinion on trading Jamal Adams. Now, to begin, I know that Jamal Adams probably wants to leave. I mean, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, so, whatever. But I think that trading him for a first and third round pick makes no sense. And here's why. You already know what Jamal Adams is. He is a superstar. Bona fide superstar. We already know this. A first and third round pick, they're basically question marks. I mean, Quinton Williams, although still young, isn't Jamal Adams. He was a first-round pick. Leonard Williams isn't Jamal Adams. He was a first-round pick. Darren Lee isn't me, and he was a first-round pick. I mean, if you're not trading this guy for someone who we already know is going to do well in the league, why take the risk in trading him for picks? So I kind of want to get your opinion on that. Thanks.
Okay. I'll make the case for why you should trade him for picks. It's because you're trying to get it is a risk. There's no denying it's a risk. You don't know what you're going to get in the draft, even if you have the first overall pick. You're more likely to hit. The higher the pick is, you're more likely to hit, but it's not a 100% success rate. There's no denying that. If you're trading for an already established player, you are likely going to have to pay them big money. Whereas if you are trading him for, let's say, use the example, a first and a third round pick. The first round pick you can get at a pretty reasonable cost for 5 years. You would have them under control for 5 years. Like Jamal has played 3 years with the Jets. They still have him under control for year 4, year 5. They could franchise him. They could franchise him a second time as well. So it's really more like 4 years. But there's no denying that it's a risk, Joe. There isn't. But you're hoping to hit on a player and get them on a cheap deal. Because in a cap sport, you can't afford to pay, the best free agent at every single position every year, right? You can't say, I'm going to throw $20 million. Let's do it like this. I'm not going to pay my quarterback $35 million, my running back $15 million, wide receiver $20, left tackle $20, right tackle $15, like the highest cap number available at each individual position. It can't work like that. You have to get good value deals. And that's why in the sport, in the capped league, guys are moving in and around because you unfortunately can't afford to pay everybody. And you have to be smart with that. So if you are looking to acquire young talent, which is what the Jets need, they need building block pieces, then you do take that risk on the first and the third. And you say that I have trust in my general manager to hit on those draft picks. Maybe if you want to do a first and a player, so you get the best of both worlds, maybe you do that. I could understand that logic and say, you know what, I would rather not do 2 or 3 picks and instead do a pick and a player. I'd say, okay. But I also think it's important for Joe Douglas to get as many swings as possible in the NFL draft because, 1, that's supposedly what he's best at. And 2, that's how you build your roster. You build your roster through the draft. There's no denying that. All the best teams in the league, homegrown talent built through the draft. So I think that's the best way that I could explain it for now. Thank you for the question, Joe from Florida. Next up, we're going over to Drew. North Carolina has a little bit of a Jamal rant, so we're going to hear him out, see what he has to say.
Hey, Matt, it's Drew from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I wanted to do a super quick rant about Jamal Adams, and maybe my question is just responding to my rant. If I was Joe Douglas, I would let Jamal Adams hold out for the whole year and then sign him to a long 4-year, $80 million contract. I don't care. Reset the market. We got a ton of cap coming in next year. And I think that's the only way we're going to be able to keep that star, Jamal Adams. And any other way, I believe. I mean, of course, we have to listen to all trade offers that come in, and if we get something crazy like a first rounder and a really good player, of course we got to do it. But I'm saying I don't think any of that's going to come in, and they're going to want to pay Jamal Adams $20 million a year. I don't think they're going to want to do it, but I say we do it. What do you think?
Thank you so much for the question, Drew. I kind of spelled it out in my intro and with so far in the other questions. I don't feel comfortable going up as high to $20 million. I don't. I think that could become problematic to your cap in the future because you're going to have to pay Sam Darnold. So that is going to be two players right there. You'd imagine over $20 million. Maybe CJ Mosley's not around by that time. Okay, we can make that argument there. It's tricky. It's really tough because you're getting into positional value, which is a conversation that I always like to bring up because it's an important one. If you're going to allocate that kind of money to a player, they have to be a game-changing player. And Jamal Adams is great. He is a really, really good player. Best safety in the league. But is he someone who's going to bring the Jets from a 5 to 7 win team to an 11 win team? I'd argue probably not. Right? Like if he's not on the roster last year, how much of a swing is it? I'll give him this. He probably won them 1 to 2 games. 1 to 2. I'll go the Dallas and the Giants game. 1 to 2. So maybe they go 5-11 instead of 7-9. I don't think you're going to get the value on a Jamal Adams at $20+ million. From the $15 to $17 million range, fine. But it's really tough from a roster building perspective to do that. It's really tough, especially when it seems more and more, the more info that comes out, it seems like he's trying to push his way out, that he doesn't want to be here. He would rather be somewhere else. And he said it when, in not as many words, when he said that he would accept a trade elsewhere and not get an extension. That's BS. That's ridiculous. Next up is Elias from Rochester, and we're going to talk about a Jamal trade idea.
Hey Matt, this is Elias from Rochester. I got you a Jamal Adams trade idea. Just probably like every other caller this week. So I'm thinking Jamal Adams to Detroit for Kenny Galladay and either a third or a second round pick.
I
kind
that
of
a lot.
want to send him to Detroit because he'll be miserable. He has to deal with Matt Patricia. He's probably fired. A GM who's probably going to get fired. Another rebuild. State tax, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Cold weather, because he's a Texas kid. He's probably hated there. So we want to make him miserable. If he's not staying the Jet, he's got to be miserable. And Kenny Galladay is a really good player. So let me know what you think. All right, go Jets.
I love the vindictiveness there. Love it. Absolutely love it. I would do that trade in a second, by the way. If it was Kenny Galladay and let's say a second, yes, a number 1 wide receiver and a second round pick for Jamal Adams. Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm definitely doing it. And I don't think he'd be happy in Detroit. I don't think it's a likely scenario there, but I would do it, definitely. If it's a potential number 1 wide receiver and a second round pick, I think you do it. I definitely do. An established number 1 wide receiver, by the way, because that's going to come up later on. But next is Chris from New Jersey, and we're going to talk a little bit about, again, a Jamal trade scenario.
Hey, Matt, what's going on? It's Chris from Jersey, Old Meadow Inn, Section 308.
Nice.
Just want to talk about a Jamal trade. Obviously, he's an elite player, but at this point, I've had enough of his nonsense. Since the beginning, there's been rumors about Dallas, and Dallas is somehow always tied to it. I know this may be crazy and probably not enough value on paper, but how about CeeDee Lamb, who's unproven in the NFL? So basically it's a first-round pick and then a third or a fourth. And honestly, it might be a little ridiculous value-wise, but I would do it for Lamb straight up. It gets rid of a guy who doesn't want to be here. You don't have to spend your entire cap space to make him happy. drafted Davis, who could be somewhat of a replacement, and you can extend May. And it gives Sam big-time weapons that he needs. And also, you don't have to pay Perryman at the end of this year. So if someone told me before the draft that you could get rid of Jamal and pull Lamb, Becton, and also Mims out of this draft, I would have signed up in a second. And that would give you pretty much Perryman, Mims, Lamb, Crowder, Herndon, Griffin, Bell, and a revamped line. That's some serious help for our quarterback, and that's what we need.
No, it is.
And cut Winters and sign Warford. Just want to know what you think. Thanks.
So definitely with you on the last part, for sure. I like CeeDee Lamb a lot. I really do. But Jamal for CeeDee Lamb straight up definitely is not enough value. I think you're more likely to get Gallup in a trade than CeeDee Lamb. But let's play the game with CeeDee Lamb for a second. What would it have to be? I think it'd have to be Lamb in a second for me. At least. That's probably the least I would do. I don't think you're getting another first in the deal, which I would love, obviously, if you get another first in the deal. But I don't think CD and a third or a fourth is going to be enough to get it done from a value perspective. I'm trying to think right now. I don't think I could talk myself into CeeDee Lamb in a third. CeeDee in a second? Yeah, I could see myself wanting to do that for sure. Just not so much, and especially not straight up. I like CeeDee a lot. I think he could definitely be a number one in this league. I like him. If the Jets didn't have such a glaring issue at the offensive line position, I would have been perfectly fine if they took CeeDee Lamb. But I don't think you could do CeeDee for Jamal straight up. Next is Josh from Woodmere. Wants to talk about adding a wide receiver from the Jets' perspective in a trade. So let's hear from him.
Hey, Matt. It's Josh from Woodmere. I just want to know what are your thoughts on maybe the Jets, pairing up like a receiver, maybe like Rashad Perriman, because, he hasn't played a game, but let's say the Jets wanted to trade for a receiver like Gallup or maybe like Godwin or Evans from Tampa Bay, or at least for that receiver.
Breaking up a little bit.
Perriman too, so, you could get another team a replacement and then, get that player with the trade for Adams. So thank you, and go Jets.
Yeah, for me, Josh, I don't think I'm looking to add anything else into it. Like, especially a Perryman who you just signed this year. I think you see what you get from Perryman this year, and whether you want to re-sign him or not, you decide after this year. For me, if I'm making a trade, I am just doing Jamal. I'm not looking to add in another piece and try to get a little too cute. I would rather just do Jamal and see what you get from there. If you want a receiver, then do something with Dallas for Michael Gallup. Or I don't think you're going to be able to pry away Godwin or Evans from Tampa. I really don't think you'd be able to do it. I'm trying to think if there's any other wide receivers that would make sense in a trade. The one that comes up a lot is the Gallup one because it makes sense. It makes a ton of sense from the Jets side and from Dallas's side. If they really want the guy, you're going to have to give up something for him. So I hope that answers your question, Josh. Next up is Phil. Wants to talk about Brashad Perryman.
Hey, Phil. Hey, Matt. It's Phil. Sorry. A question I have is, what do you think about Brashad Perryman? Personally, I'm huge about the signing. I wasn't a fan of Robbie Anderson. I never really was. I know that's shocking. That might be shocking to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but here's a stat that I found. Robbie Anderson scored 5 touchdowns last season. When Perryman started, 4 games, he scored 6 touchdowns. So just by that, I'm pretty shocked. So and Jameis Winston was thrown to him. So let me know what you think. And go Jets. Thanks. Bye.
I don't think you could look at that small of a sample size and say that Perryman's definitely better than Robbie because of that. My take on the Robbie Anderson versus Brashad Perryman is this. I think they're very similar. Perryman hasn't been able to do it consistently enough over his career. Like last year, he was really, really good in the last 5 games. The first 10 or so, granted he wasn't starting as much, but he wasn't all that great. He was also a former first-round pick who, for the most part, besides last year, has been a bust so far. I am curious to see what he's going to be this year. I think we're going to get a pretty good test because he's going to be a starting outside receiver. There's no doubt about that. And, maybe he proves that he can do it and he puts up 900-plus yards this year. That'd be great. But I think you're probably going to get pretty similar numbers to what you got from Robbie the last couple of years. I think Robbie has shown more consistency in his career than Perryman has. And the really only other difference is Perryman's a little bit more of a bigger body. They're very similar speed-wise. I preferred Robbie by a slight margin, but I think Brashad Perryman was the second best wide receiver option on the market outside of Robbie. Because obviously this is talking after Cooper went back to Dallas. But I don't know really I guess this comes down to what am I expecting from Brashad Perryman this year. I say probably 7. I could see it being like 900 yards and 6 touchdowns, or I could see it being like 400 yards and like 2 touchdowns and, only playing 10 games. If he plays the full 16 games, I think he could put up 700 to 800 yards and maybe 6 touchdowns. I think that's probably fair. And Robbie's probably going to do the same in Carolina, somewhere in that same boat. Next up is Travis from Ohio, and we're going to talk Joe Douglas and Jamal Adams.
Hey, Matt. It's Travis from Ohio. Hope you enjoyed the cookout with your dad today.
Thank you.
And happy Father's Day to him and all the fathers out there. I still miss mine, so hope you enjoyed every minute of it with yours. Hey, Joe Douglas, again, this is maybe the biggest thing he's ever had to face so far with the Jets is the whole Jamal Adams situation. And I'm with you. I would stand pat, and I wouldn't pay him, and maybe negotiate a contract next year depending on what the salary cap is, unless you can get Ngakwe or Gallup, like you said, or if something else awesome comes along with draft picks. But I definitely want players that can help out this year too.
Okay.
But looking back, I thought, and I know I called in before about Ashton Davis, I thought was an awesome pick. If we do move him, he becomes even a more important pick, and people had him rated as the best or second best safety in the draft this year. So that's again Joe Douglas looking ahead. And if he would have had to move on from May this year and kept Adams, then he could have slid him over there. But now it might be the opposite. He might be able to get May cheaper than hanging on to Adams. So anyway, we'll see. Another thing, real quick, was do you think with Sam Darnold's unfortunate lack of development, I'm not putting it on him at all, and Lord knows Gase sucks. So,
that's fair.
And he didn't have any offensive coordinators or minds before that, so he's been doing it all and just almost raw talent, even when he's seeing ghosts. So with no talent around him. So hopefully this year he can do it. But because of lack of production, do you think we can get Sam cheaper actually as a almost happy accident when his contract comes up? I mean, something to think about. I mean, we might get him for like $25 million instead of 30 plus, just because he, hasn't hit the numbers, and they can go to his agent and point that out. Anyway, love you, buddy. Go Jets, and stay healthy as usual. Bye.
Thank you so much, Travis. Appreciate the question as always. Love hearing from you. Okay, so first we'll start with the Jamal and Joe Douglas. I think you hit it on the head for the most part, and Ashton Davis is going to be really huge one way or the other, because either it's going to be one or two things. A, Jamal stays and Ashton Davis takes over from Marcus May, or B, May and Davis is your new safety duo. Either way, a smart pick from Joe Douglas now that we see how this is turning out, for sure. As for the Sam Darnold thing, That's an interesting point. I would agree that he hasn't taken that huge step yet. Maybe this year's the year with a better offensive line and some more talent around him. Maybe he takes that step forward. But if I'm projecting right now based on what we've seen, I'd say we'd be more likely to see a contract extension worth around 25 million than 30. So I agree with you on that. Unless something crazy happens over the next 2 years and he, trends towards a top 10 quarterback in the league, which I think we'd all rather, right? In a perfect world, Sam Darnold proves that he should be paid $30+ million a year, and we're all happy because that means the Jets are contending for the playoffs every year. We'll see, but as of right now, I would say yes, I agree with you. You're probably more likely to get him for around 25 than you are for $30+ million, which could, like you say, be a blessing in disguise. So thanks again, Travis. Always love hearing from you. Last one's from Aaron in Illinois. Wants to talk about a Jamal Adams trade scenario.
All right. My name's Aaron, and I'm from Illinois, and I'm a big Jets fan, but so since lately, you've been hearing about the whole Jamal Adams situation, about how he wants to get out of New York, and I got a great trade proposal, and this honestly makes a lot of sense. So what I was thinking about is, if we do trade Jamal Adams, I think we should trade him to Pittsburgh for Juju Smith-Schuster and a first-round pick, because it's a win-win, because the Steelers' defense will be even better. Like, I know the Steelers already got Minkah Fitzpatrick, but having two really good safeties together will be like a dynamic duo. And plus, now on that, for the Jets side, the Jets don't really have any good receivers whatsoever. So bringing Juju Smith in, we'll finally have a number one receiver, and we can finally be done trying to search one through the draft and stuff like that. Now on that, Sam Darnold and Juju Smith-Schuster, they already have great chemistry, so it'll work perfectly for both sides. I personally think that would be a good trade, but let me know what you think of that.
Yeah, appreciate it. So thank you so much for calling in, Aaron. I like it from the Jets' perspective a lot. I really do. If you're able to add someone like Juju and a first-round pick, hell yeah, I'm in. Because the Jets have to, get a legitimate wide receiver in here. Another really good receiver. That'd be great. From Pittsburgh's side, I don't know how much I see it. Like, I could see Juju getting moved because I don't know if he re-signs. But with Minkah Fitzpatrick already on the team, like you mentioned, I don't know if they're going to be willing to pay both of those guys. Maybe they view it a little bit differently than I do in terms of valuing having two, really premier safeties. But I think this trade definitely leans more in the Jets' favor because you're getting that first-round pick. You're getting a wide receiver who we know is a number one wide receiver. I would sign up for it. As a Jets fan, yeah, 100%. I'm with you on that. I like it. I think it's really good. I don't know if Pittsburgh would do it. That's my only critique on it. I don't know if Pittsburgh would do it. But if they would, hell yeah, sign me up. I think that's a great trade proposal. So that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Matt O'Leary. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get this podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.